Welcome back to Fantasy Baseball Cafe's weekly pitching preview. I'm Jason Gilbo again here covering all the topics from two-star pitchers to bullpens and to injuries. I'll start off with the two-star guys this week. There's a handful of studs going. You got Chris Sale, Corey Kluber, Sonny Gray, Cole Hamels, James Shields, John Lester, all guys that you don't really need to worry about matchup-wise and trust their skill enough to just leave them in regardless. None of the matchups really scare me anyway. Nobody pitching in cores here. So fire those guys up as usual. A lot of tier 2 guys I really like this week. You guys, AJ Burnett, Shelby Miller, Nate Carnes, Lance McCullers is all going. A guy who I really like is AJ Burnett. He's got a really great 2 matchups this week. He's pitching both at home. Being back in Pittsburgh has really done wonders for his game, and he was great the 2 years he was there. Went off to Philly and had an off year. You kind of picked on him hitting wise, and now he's back in Pittsburgh. He's got 2.87 FIP, a really healthy ground ball rate at 55.4%. So he takes on the Brewers and the Phillies both at home, where he has a 1.69 ERA this season. Obviously, pitching in PNC is just one of the best places to pitch. Milwaukee and Philly are just not two great offenses. Philly's probably the worst in the league right now, and Milwaukee's bottom 10. And they both carry league average strikeouts and higher. So Burnett should pick up a healthy amount of Ks. Looking at weather, Burnett may be pushed back to Tuesday, but should still have the 2 starts. Going on to the next guy, Shelby Miller takes on the Padres at home, which obviously the Padres are weaker offense, and then he heads to New York where he'll face the Mets. So 2 great opponents to really pick on. He's not a flashy strikeout guy, but he's just been really getting the job done. Quality start after quality start, which he will likely carry on 2 more this week. Like Burnett, he gets the luxury of pitching in 2 pitchers' parks. Not much to worry about this week for Shelby Miller. Look at the next guy here, Nate Carnes. He's pitched pretty well this season. His FIP is 4.39, which has me believing he could blow up any minute. But I don't believe that'll be this week because he takes on the Angels, which he struggled a little bit on the road. And then he takes on the White Sox. Both are 2 offenses in the bottom half, and they struggle on the road. Carnes has a nice 22% strikeout rate, 3.63 ERA. He'll pitch in Tropicana, so you really like his odds there. And then Lance McCullers, who I'm going to break into later on, he's my highlight pitcher profile pitcher this week. He's been really, really good, and he's still only about 50% owned to 60% owned in leagues around. His strikeout rate is through the roof, which I'll touch on his stats a little bit later, but he faces the White Sox and the Mariners this week. 2 less threatening lineups. The Mariners have a 23.5% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching. So I like his odds, and the White Sox, they haven't been anything special this season. Tier 2 guy that I'm listing here is John Lackey. I'm probably going to fade him this week. Obviously he's pitching in Colorado, which you don't really like anyone pitching in Colorado other than the true aces, and even then sometimes it's a bit scary. But John Lackey, he's been pretty good this season, but I'm just not going to take my chances. The second start I'm leaning kind of either way because he takes on the Royals at home. Busch Stadium, it holds and runs pretty nicely. He's got a decent ground ball rate, so he'll be all right. The Royals are kind of slipping offensively over the last week, so I'll probably roll the dice against Kansas City, but I'm definitely going to leave him on the bench for Colorado. And then if you're looking at a guy who's kind of deeper in the waiver wire and free agency, is Chris Heston. Kind of been up and down lately, but had a really nice start. He's going to take on the Mets on the road this week, which he's kind of struggled a little bit on the road, but pitching in New York is going to be a great park for him to pitch in. He's got decent ground ball rates. 20% strikeout rate, which the ground ball rate is going to help him out, against the Mets, who have a couple lefties who can pop here. But other than that, I mean, I really like his matchups. And because he's taking on Diamondbacks who are a better than average offense, because he's at home, I'm going to still roll the dice on him. I'm picking him for 2 quality starts this week. And if you're looking for some guys to pick up off the waiver wire, Lance McCullers, I mean, he's 2-0 in 4 starts with a 1.88 ERA. I mentioned his numbers above, 55% owned on ESPN, 58% owned on Yahoo. But like I said, I'll touch into him later on in the podcast here. Another rookie guy who's, came out for Texas, Chichi Gonzalez, 2-0. He's got no earned runs through 15 innings. He threw a complete game shutout against the Royals. So, I mean, that's a really impressive stat there against the Royals. I mean, they're a pretty good offensive team, but like I said, they're struggling a little bit. Still, I mean, I don't expect Chichi Gonzalez to throw a complete game shutout against the Royals. So, I mean, definitely a guy who is on my radar now to pick up. Third guy here, Mike Pelfrey, who has been really good this season, 2.28 ERA. He's 5-2, 3 earned runs in the last 4 starts combined. Still just 30% owned in ESPN and 20% owned in Yahoo. He's developing his pitches really nicely, kind of reinventing himself, and obviously pitching in Minnesota is a great bonus there. So I'm picking up Mike Pelfrey for the rest of the season, or unless he starts regressing out of nowhere. But I don't really see anything in his game this season to lead me to believe he'll do that. So here's pitcher profile. I'm looking at Lance McCullers. He's thrown 4 starts this season. He's 2-0. 2 really excellent starts, and then 2 kind of where he brought the strikeout game, but, he's running his pitch count up, which he didn't get through 5, which is a little disappointing. But, I mean, coming off the start against Baltimore where he threw 9 innings and allowed 1 earned and struck out 11 is really impressive. I mean, the strikeout rate is close to 30%. I mean, it's 29.6. He's allowing a 246 WOBA, 1.70 FIP. His ground ball rate is okay, but the 30% line drive rate to right-handed bats is a little concerning. But I mean, what this guy has, I mean, he's working, he works with the fastball cutter, which he throws at about low 90s, 93 miles an hour he averages. And his curveball is his strikeout pitch. And he's got a slider and a change, but he doesn't really rely on those a lot. And he's got a nice healthy swing strike rate, 9.3%. But just diving into his games, I mean, he shut down the Tigers, the Baltimore Orioles. He hasn't allowed more than 2 runs in a start this season. So I like him. I like him for the rest of the season. The Astros are still kind of unsure what they want to do with him. They haven't come out and said he's going to be our guy in the rotation for the rest of the season. But definitely a guy who should be there in the long run, especially with the injuries they got going on. So definitely go out and grab him. Nice source of strikeouts. His whip is decent. So definitely a guy to own. Take a look at some bullpen situations. I think a guy who's been really good but lacking in the saves, which has led his ownership to drop tremendously, is Brett Cecil. He's just not getting save opportunities, and that's been a problem because those are the numbers you need. But he's been really good this season, or this May. He had a really shaky April, which led to a bunch of changes. But a 1.13 ERA in May. He's got a 31% strikeout rate on the season. I'm a guy who's going to go out and get him. And if there's a guy who has him and he's willing to ship him off for cheap, I'm going to grab him. Because he's going to get save opportunities. It's not happening, and it's really weird. I mean, you're not going to see this too often, so I'm definitely a guy I want to grab, and he's probably available in your league just because people are sick of having him not save games. It's not because he's not the closer; he's just not getting the opportunities. But that'll go away, and he'll pick up some saves here. Moving on, next is Addison Reed. Arizona Republic reported that he is closer to returning to the closer role. A guy who's a little sketchy. I can't necessarily trust him, but if you're in chasing saves, you're gonna roll the dice, and Brad Ziegler will head back to the setup role. So Addison Reed could be a popular ad here over the next week or two. Rafael Soriano, free agent right now, is getting more and more interest as the season goes on. Guys looking to add, a pretty established closer. But like you said, he's open to not taking the closer role, which would just throw his value out the window. But if he does head to a team like Chicago, like Seattle, where they need someone to get some saves in, he's a guy who you need to add. So keep an eye on the reports heading out. I'm definitely going to be listening on the waiver wire ad articles and just keeping a constant eye on him, just because he is a guy who will come in and be immediate fantasy value right away. And taking a look at the injury reports, a couple guys making rehab starts. Verlander had a horrible first rehab start, which led him to a second one, but he struck out 9 in the second over 5 2/3, and just allowed 1 earned. So he's not expected to make another one, and he should be due back next week and starting. So definitely a nice add if you're hoping for a bounce back year from Verlander, which I certainly am, and I'm willing to roll the dice on him, coming in and helping my fantasy team. Hisashi Iwakuma is due back in early July. He's throwing bullpen sessions. A guy of his age, they got to be careful with him. He's obviously not going to be a quick fix and come back completely healthy and, only due back. We already saw that with the setback. So keep an eye on him. He's definitely, he's a guy who's a really proven pitcher, and he's pitching in Seattle, and they need some help. So a guy who was, drafted 100% owned early in the season, definitely keep an eye on him. He should be back early July. And of course, we are watching Jose Fernandez. Made his first rehab start, so he's going right in the right direction. No setback, but he allowed 8 hits and 5 earned with just 2 strikeouts. He did throw 39 strikes out of his 54 pitches. Of course, you're going to, expect some rust after a guy who just had Tommy John surgery, so he's going to be work his way back. I'm still not looking for him until the All-Star break, so definitely keep an eye there. And then the Nationals, 2 guys out. Doug Fister, who threw a rehab start. He went 3 2/3. He did strike out 6, which is nice. He's not really a big strikeout pitcher anyway, so he's really pitching against lower-end talent. Did throw 47 strikes out of 63 pitches, which is nice to see. The 7 hits is a little concerning over just 3 2/3. But a guy who's kind of just more of a quality start guy in the bigs anyway. And then Steven Strasburg, he threw a short bullpen session and felt fine, threw all of his pitches. He's expected to hop off the DL when he's ready. I don't think he's going to need a rehab start unless they decided they want him to see where he's at. But a guy you're hoping this time off is really going to turn his season around, because he's been pretty awful this season. So that's going to wrap it up here at Fantasy Baseball Cafe's pitcher preview. Be sure to tune into our hot and cold reports, where I'll be breaking down who's hot, who's not, buy low, sell high type of deal there. And then always, keep your forum trade talks up. I'll be taking a few of those, usually about 5 a week, and breaking those down and looking at their worth. And then, always Mondays, checking out the pitcher previews for the week. So tune in next Monday for the pitcher preview, and then later on this week for those hot and cold reports and trade talks.